Hi everyone, Chris Petri here. Today we're having some interesting fun. We're going to just take a look at some studio setups for painting watercolors. I'm going to show you my normal setup that I use when I'm painting in the studio at my house. And I thought this would be just like a nice way to kind of show you like what my setup is, how I kind of use my brushes, my paint, my water, um, and the process and how I have things kind of set up here when I'm making videos. So you probably noticed that the we're zoomed all the way back up so you can kind of see most of my art table. Normally I'm pretty much zoomed in really close to the paper when we're working so that you can see the painting and my brush and so forth. But this is sort of one of the setups I use, which would be a palette on the left, paper and painting in the middle, and then water container and sponge on the right. And this way we can go in and we can rinse our brush, tap a little bit of water off the brush on the sponge, and then go and do our work on our paper. And then we're in pretty good shape. We have our palette over here. I like to hold my palette in my hand most of the times. For making videos I use a table like this. So this is my normal setup for videos. So I'm using my art table here. It's about this height of a countertop, a kitchen countertop. So it's kind of high, about waist high, a little bit lower than waist high, belt height. And this works really good. But usually when I paint, every day and so forth, I usually sit at a chair and I have an easel that I use. So I have an easel set up. The paper's more or less, a lot of times my paper when I work normally is tipped. My palette usually is tipped on a 45-degree angle when I'm painting normally. But for videos, I put the paper flat on the table like this here. So I'll go over that in another video. Maybe in the next couple weeks or months, I'll kind of go over what my normal setup is if I'm sitting at my studio in a chair working on an easel, and as well as like outdoors. So my outdoors setup would be similar to what I use normally to paint in my studio. And then for making videos, I use a table. So really the only time I'm using a table is when I'm making videos. Sometimes if it is sometimes I will use a table. Maybe if I'm doing like a really large painting, maybe like a 2 foot by 3 foot painting, I might use a table to paint on because it's a little bit easier to work and have stuff there. But not to get into that too much. The setup basically is palette over here and paper here and water supply on the right. And so there's different palettes we can use. This is a nice smaller plastic Winsor Newton palette for like outdoors, maybe doing outdoor sketches, or maybe if you bring this if you're out visiting or at work for lunchtime or something, if you wanted to do a quick painting, you might bring a small watercolor sketch pad, and you can have a small palette here with colors on it, and you can do a little bit of work there with just a brush or two and a little bit of water in a cup or something. So so this is a nice small compact palette that's really nice. This is a porcelain plate dish. This is nice to have. You can just use a regular normal dinner plate too. That works. I've used that a number of times. Just using a normal dinner plate, ceramic or Corning ware, whatever. Makes a nice palette. Easy to clean up. You can wash all the paint off and it comes right back to nice, beautiful white, which is good. So we can see the colors as we're painting and mixing and so forth. And so these would be my staple items here. I have a large and a small spritzer bottle. So I'll spritz on the paints here, keep them moist while I'm working, especially if it's warm inside the house. If the heat's on, I got to spritz the paint a little bit more often, or if it's outside and it's really hot out. And then a larger spritzer bottle. I might use this to clean up the palette after I'm done working. A little more water. I always have paper towels and tissues. You can substitute paper towels and tissues with maybe an old t-shirt or something. I clip a little piece of an an old t-shirt, clip a little piece off that, and that's perfect. You can blot up paint with it. You can dab off water off the brush with a little piece of rag here, and we can wipe up the palette too with this. So we can make many. We could have many small rags here and keep them around the studio, and we could clean up with these too instead of the paper towels. And then we could use a wash bucket and rinse them out every once in a while. And the brushes, it's just a round brush, a Kolinsky Sable round brush. I have an assortment of brushes. I use a lot of different brushes over the years now, so I've tried pretty much all the brushes. I tried to make that a point when I first started watercolor, and I encourage everybody, if you're sort of like newer to watercolor and you can, and get out to the art stores, or you go online and you can buy different types of brushes, see how they handle. You buy what you can within your budget. As far as quality goes, and how many you buy and so forth. But I tended when I first started to buy like two of each kind of brush. So I would buy like a larger and a smaller round brush, and then a larger and a smaller square brush or flat brush, and then a large and a small mop brush, and a needlepoint brush. And there's other kinds I have too as well. I've built up a lot of a collection of brushes and so forth. But I guess what I'm kind of communicating here is, just trying different brushes to see how you like the effects you can get with them. It also depends too on if you're role modeling yourself after a certain artist, you'd want to buy their brushes and what they use. So that makes total sense. So, if you're going after a certain look in your watercolors and you find a certain artist you really love and you want to paint like them, then you'd probably try to use the same brushes they use all the time. And whatever they might suggest, what kind of paper they use, their brushes, their paints, their palette, the colors that they use. And if you stick with that, that's a great way to go to have your paintings turn out more like what you're looking for, what you really like, and as far as your paintings go. So some painters, some watercolor artists are, they have more detail in their paintings. Some artists have less detail. Some have more fluid and more water on the paper than other watercolor artists. Some artists use less water in their watercolor paintings. So it's all up to what you like to do. But I find that that's just a tidbit of information. I find that like whatever look you're looking for in your watercolors, and sometimes it might change. So you might start off liking one artist, then you might find you like another artist, and then so over 4 or 5 years or 10 years, you might like 5 or 6 different artists. And you might have tried painting like each of them a little bit to try to find what you like as far as your own style, So, or you might just say, I just like this one artist, and I'm just going to stick with that person and try to paint like they paint. And and if you get to that level where you've gotten to the look you're after with what your paintings are looking like, then you can try different things, or you can stick with that one look that you have. It's totally up to you as far as how you want to paint and what your style is. And you can, if you've been painting just a couple years or so, you have the freedom to try as many different styles and techniques as you want. And sometimes you might even decide you want to change and go into oil painting or acrylic painting, or so there's a lot of different things you can do in art. So as an artist, you have the control to try different things. Change your setup, just like I'm showing you my setup here. Maybe some of this makes sense. Maybe some of it is you might not like the way I have things set up, and you can set your workstation up the way you think is best, and the way what works best for you. So this is basically what I use for my studio here in making my videos. And maybe we'll do a little bit of painting here. I'm going to try to find some paper. Okay, now paper. These are great. The Arches gummed pads. The paper is gummed here. I'm thinking you can see that pretty clearly. It's gummed around all 4 sides. And then when you're finished completed with your painting and it's complete 100% dry, like after a day or or not even a day, I guess a couple hours maybe. It depends. You have to check it, see how dry it is. Then you can just separate the paper from the pad and peel off that one page. And what's great about these is because they're gummed, whenever you put lots of water onto this paper and it buckles and gets wavy as you're painting, if you let it dry, the paper goes back to a nice flat, just like this, a nice flat state of just the way it is, the way you see it here. So that's what's great about a gummed pad. They're so well attached around the perimeter of this pad here, this block. They call these watercolor blocks. Yeah, you'll definitely you'll have no problem with the paper being buckled. This is nice if you just want to do a painting and then right away put it into a frame, put a mat on it and put it into a frame because it'll dry nice and flat. Sometimes it's a problem if you have a painting and it gets all buckled and then you go to put it into a frame. The paper should be nice and flat when you put it into a frame if you're going to frame your paintings as you go. All right, so let's have a little fun here just to kind of experiment a little bit with our brushes. I think I'll zoom in just a touch here. And I'm going to move this back just a bit. There we go. Okay, so now we're kind of going to I'll go through my brushes like we had before here. So for here, this is the round brush. We can get some nice effects with the round brush. So that might be some grass and some a field and some blue sky. Maybe some mountains there with some purplish color paint. So that's like, not so much, that's not too much water. That's more of a drier technique doing that type of a small sketch here. You can see I didn't use a lot of water. And then if we went to a mop brush, we can we'll use a mop brush now and we'll do the same idea. Mops hold a lot of water. I think mop brushes, a lot of times artists that like to paint larger paintings will use mop brushes. I think that's sort of just kind of goes with the territory. When we're using these type of larger brushes that hold a lot of water, we're probably using a larger paper and more water. And with more water, you can have more mixing of paint. So mop brush, we're going to have more paint. All right, so those are the two, and then of course we have other brushes. We said we had the flat brushes, and we can get some interesting shapes with the flat brush. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this little tour of the studio here and some basic materials and tools and supplies. We'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye now.